A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they will never sit. And to me, that quote kind of expresses Project Elm, Cape Ann trees, Gloucester 400 trees. All these projects are people in the present committed to planting trees for a variety of reasons, but they're doing it fundamentally for the betterment of the future state of the planet and our communities, which I think is just beautiful.
There's a thing called the heat island effect in cities. And you will have areas that have trees in a city, as opposed to a completely open area, can be 10 degrees cooler.
All three varieties that we will grow to becoming like 40, 50, 60 feet, and about 20, 30, 40 feet in width. So this will be a really pretty dense row of trees in about 20 years' time. If you look at most cities, the parts that if you document where the trees are, where the trees are not, are typically in the poorer parts of the cities. It just is how it is in most every city in the country. Gloucester is no exception. So part of where I'm locating the trees are in public housing, and 20 went to a cemetery here. So I'm also looking at places that people gather, and in public parks, which everybody gets to use. It's another place to focus on. So that's another way of making sure that people who may not have open space, backyards of their own, come to a park and enjoy the trees and nature. If anybody's been watching the news, I think the answer is quite clear that there is a global crisis we're all facing, and we all have to do a little bit, and this is my little bit.
You know, people think, oh, climate, it's hopeless, I can't do anything. Well, what energizes people, if they can do something, and one of the champions of this is a guy named Doug Ptolemy, and he wrote a book called Nature's Best Hope. And he basically says, start with your own backyard.
It was all covered with trees. It was a forest. And the people before me that came in and bought it cleared the land, raped the land. Right now, there's, out of the 5 trees there, at least 4 of them are dead.
Wow.
They got to come down. That's why I had the oak tree planted. So this is my favorite tree in the whole yard. It's a special magnolia, and one of the first things to bloom.
And this idea of the climate crisis is such a big, behemoth problem. It's difficult for someone at the individual level to feel like there's anything that they can do that would have a meaningful impact. And what I liked about Project Elm, and what I like about Gloucester 400, is it gives people an opportunity to participate at the individual level in a community-wide effort to take real action to, at least in a small way, mitigate some of the problems that are associated with the climate crisis in our local communities. And not all people are motivated by the same thing. Some people are motivated by the climate crisis. Some people are not motivated by that. They're motivated by a sense of wanting to recapture a nostalgic quality of the past by putting elm trees on the local streetscapes, because that's what they remember when they were, young people living in these communities.
I had the idea of, wow, we should plant 400 trees for the 400th anniversary, and then fast forward and I'm introduced to Peter, and they're also working on a similar program. So I think it's just a wonderful idea. I live in West Gloucester near Beechbrook Cemetery. A lot of problems with gypsy moths and gypsy moth caterpillars. And I had to hire an arborist about 2 years ago to take down about 7 trees in my yard that were killed My neighbor had probably twice as many. And then the city on the cemetery behind me probably took down well over a dozen or more. And so that's what really was an eye-opener for me, is that in just 1 or 2 summers, there were probably hundreds of trees that were just dead. I mean, gonzo. And it's going to take a long time to replace them. So if we take out 100 trees, 400 trees would be a nice way to try to make up the difference. So as I said, it's the least we can do to just start trying to replenish and replace and bring back the glory of the city that it was when it was much more tree-lined.
We're about strengthening community. And when I learned about this project and met Peter and just sort of got a sense of what the outcomes were and how important this project is to understanding our past and building for our future, it was just absolutely aligned.
Trees provide an incredible benefit to everyone. I mean, the immediate thing you think of is the beauty of trees in a city. That's part of the infrastructure, the ethos of that urban environment.
Elms used to dominate local streetscapes, and then I think 50, 60 years ago, elms were decimated by Dutch elm disease, and they had to be taken down, and they were dying. So Nathan was committed to repopulating the local streetscapes.
It dates back to when I was a little kid, and I remember the beautiful way that Cape Ann was years ago, and we're talking 50 years ago, and it was a different place because of trees. They were a part of me, and so much so that the places where they were on the street, I can still see them today, and I can walk by and show you those spots and tell you that that's where an elm tree sat, and you can see the visible hole that's under the pavement. Come to find out, people felt as I did about the elm. And there was this nostalgia, this remembrance of the way things were and how beautiful it was. And so it was easy to bring this project forward because as soon as people heard about it, they wanted to be involved.
I just liked the whole idea of the group, for one thing, the project that you were doing. And I remember the elm trees from when I was little, and, you know, they're all gone.
What do you remember about them?
How big and majestic they were. Oh, here's my tree. In fact, it's starting to kind of like bud out a little bit. It's kind of exciting. I can't wait to see some leaves come out and, you know that it's alive and prospering.
Historically, you know, in any community, including Cape Ann, in order for us to develop our towns and our cities and our houses and our areas for learning, our YMCA here, it's required removing land and removing trees. So we've lost a lot. Something like the act of planting a tree and watching it grow, it's a symbol of hope for kids. And I think they really need that right now.
You know, there's so much development going on around the world, and you know, we're losing a lot of trees and a lot of, you know, rainforest. And I just thought if I could help any little bit, that I'd do it.
These are neighbors, citizens deciding we want to take this action. It's kind of inspiring to see a response to a global problem at the local level. People just deciding they want to do it.
Got an email. Do you want a free tree? And I said, yes, of course. Tikkun olam. Tikkun olam. It's a Jewish phrase, repair the world. Replenish, replace what we've destroyed. Yes, yes, yes. We're going to put trees on the hill to replace what was taken down by our neighbor, and we want a free tree? How do you say no to that? We want to put back, replace what's been broken, because we have children, we'll have grandchildren. We want the world to exist in a clean environment. I mean, look at this tree. With this wonderful maple, that's what we want. I want more trees, I want clean air.
you know, not only the beauty and the contribution they make visually to a city, which I absolutely think is true, but the ecosystem benefits and the fact that they sequester CO2, that they produce oxygen, that they stabilize the soil, that they produce food for birds and other animals. They're essential to our ecosystem. This is really important. And it's, if we're going to be resistant to our climate crisis, and if we're going to, you know, deal with the effects, trees play a huge part.
Then you come over this way.
Yeah, no, here.
It takes three of us.
Sol's got the back. Okay, so you're next. Okay, now you got to stretch as far as you can.
Okay.
Everybody got a hand?
Okay. That's how big it is.
This is a big tree. In case you didn't know, the fact that this tree does so much more than a smaller tree, that it's pulling in CO2 and producing oxygen, it disproportionately more than the smaller trees.
These trees, most of them are at Camp Spindrift. They're immensely symbolic. They're going to be a symbol of life and transformation. That there are some children that are going to come to Camp Spindrift this summer, maybe as 7-year-olds, and in 10 years, as teenagers, they're going to be staff members at Camp Spindrift, and they're going to remember when these trees were babies. They're going to have a special connection to the trees, and I think there's something really powerful in that.
I take pictures almost every year. I like to see them growing. I like to, I'm going to say, make a story for myself of living here.
Some of these trees are going to be 400-500 years old. So should the species survive, should Gloucester as a community be sustainable for another 400 years, there's a chance that some of these trees that are being planted today will still be alive at that point.
And you know, they talk about Gloucester 400 being a legacy project. Well, okay, what better legacy than first identify the oldest ones around and be planting trees that are indigenous, native, keystone species that can be enjoyed for, years to come.
What does it mean to you to plant a tree that will be 200-300 years old?
Sustainability, happiness that I brought something to the area, happiness that I brought something to the future generations. Because they're part of our landscape, They're part of our heritage.
People are just enthused about the opportunity to be a part of something. And not only something nostalgic, that's something that's going to pay it forward and make a real difference. Because, an average tree like an elm, 100, 150 years on a good site with good sun and water and such. And that can have a dramatic impact on climate change. So we've got 275 in the ground already, and we're heading towards 1,010, and that's going to make a difference.
To me, 400 Trees Project is a very important opportunity for Gloucester and the people of Gloucester to engage with something they've taken for granted and learn from these residents who have been here longer than we have.
That it's something from my past. And, it's nice to know that it can continue to live on after I'm gone.
Time is of the essence to do something. And a tree is something impactful that you can leave, and it'll stay long after we're gone. And it'll likely propagate others that will continue the trajectory.
There's so many reasons to say no and not do something. And you can come up with a myriad of excuses, reasons. The most important thing to do is take the first step. Do something.